Thor. Once upon a time, in a town not far away, there lived a beautiful furry dog. This dog's life was a very happy one. He lived with a family that loved dogs. He always had lots of food to eat and big juicy bones on special occasions. The family named their dog Thor because they wanted him to scare away burglars and be fierce. But Thor was a gentle and loving dog who spent most of his time running in his yard, where he was happy to chase squirrels or sleep in the shade. The people next door had a dog too, named Critter. Critter had been a part of Thor's life for a long time. Each morning, Thor looked forward to going to the fence and running up and down its length with Critter on the other side. They barked at each other, panted and whined together, and even sometimes were able to play in each other's yards. Critter was so much a part of Thor's life that it seemed natural that he would always be there at the fence, waiting to greet him. One morning, when Thor ran to the fence as he usually did, something was different. Critter did not appear. Thor spent all day waiting and watching by the fence with a sadder and sadder look on his face. Still, there was no Critter. Now Thor's owners understood that Critter had died, but they did not know how to make Thor understand what had happened. Finally, they led Thor to the next yard to view Critter before he was buried. Thor sniffed and then began to whine. He knew then that Critter was gone, but knowing didn't stop his pain. Thor got a pain in his heart that grew and grew. He refused to eat and he stopped chasing squirrels. Every time he glanced at the fence, Thor would be reminded that Critter was gone, and a big tear would roll from his eye. His owners tried to interest him in new toys, in walks, or in fancy bones, but Thor would not be comforted. One day, as Thor glanced at the fence next door, feeling again his sorrow, a young puppy ran across the yard. Thor was horrified. How dare these people think that Critter could be replaced? Determined that he would not pay any attention to the newcomer, he curled up in the shade of an old tree and fell into a deep and troubled sleep. As Thor slept, Critter came in a special dream to talk to his heart. You are hurting because you miss me, and you miss me because you've been looking for me in the wrong place. Don't look for me on the outside. I'm here in your heart. Listening to the words of his friend, Thor began to feel a fullness in his heart that he'd never felt before, a fullness that hurt and felt good at the same time. And it was in this dream that Thor made his heart big enough for the two of them. After that, Critter and Thor talked for a long time in the way those who love each other talk. When he awoke, Thor stretched and yawned, and suddenly noticed the puppy staring longingly at him through the fence. As he looked back at the little dog, Thor noticed a new feeling growing inside him. He sat there, thinking again of his dream, and let its special message be clear to his heart. Then slowly, Thor walked across the yard, and with a special greeting that only dogs can understand, Thor leaned through the fence and licked the furry head of the puppy. I once knew a dog named Critter, Thor told the puppy, and as he did this, he felt Critter smile. Hi, it's Mandy, and I suppose you've realized by now I love stories, because stories can tell you so much. And the stories I read are for adults and for children. And I thought by putting these stories across, I'm giving you a key to explain to your children what the process is and what we're all going through. And in the story I just read you now, it is the whole grief process explained. From the denial, where in denial we freeze. We can't react. People will say if it's been a death, but I just spoke to him. I saw him. I was on the phone. And that feeling of disbelief. And that is what we all felt at that moment of lockdown. Denial, disbelief. We couldn't understand what was happening. But we need that because that gives the brain the time to process the information. Another thing that lockdown has made very difficult in this process is that families haven't been able to be with their loved ones. They haven't been able to work through the denial of having a funeral and mourning together. So a lot haven't worked through the denial stage, so it's still the disbelief. And then one goes on to guilt, and as I said previously, we don't necessarily feel these things at the same time, but it'll be guilt in a death of things not done, things not said. In the COVID, we've got other types of grief, which we will get to later on. And then anger at the world, anger, irritability at each other, at anybody that's around. And then depression. And that is that feeling of sadness. Just as in the first story, when that little chipmunk was deep in the dark, that feeling of the world closing in on you is the depression. Hi, this is Mandy. Just to remind you, this is not psychotherapy. I am just giving you keys to help you through this time. If you need help, please go and see a therapist.